Okay, so let's now talk about variables in our new tutorial. You can find more tutorials at php.heaveninteractive.com. And we have our outline. What is a variable? Holding numbers in variables, holding strings in variables, combining two variables, and passing variables using get, also known as a query string. So a variable is a container, and a variable can change, thus it's called a variable. I open up a new PHP text file. I'm going to save my file as variables.php. I make a new PHP block, and I'm going to make a variable to contain a string. Okay, username equals Mary. Okay, so this container username, notice it has a $sign in front of it. Your variables always have $signs in front of them in PHP. Equals Mary, and I'm going to echo hello dot username. As we know from our previous tutorials, this is going to give us the result of outputting hello Mary to the screen. Now I can change that username, so I'm going to change the contents of the container. Username equals John, and I'm going to echo a break first of all, and then you have changed your name to username. Okay, so it says hello Mary, you have changed your name to John. Okay, now notice we never wrote Mary or John in our statements. We just used the username container each time. So this time we have echo hello username. We change the name here, output a break statement, and then we have changed our name to John. Notice like I did the break statement simply for formatting and readability, because if I didn't, you would have this on the same line. So you'll see this a lot in PHP scripts. The variable will contain one value, and then later it will be changed to a different value. Okay, you know, pretty basic. You're just beginning to learn here, so you'll see that becoming more significant later on. Holding numbers in variables. Okay, we could say, for example, number of logins equals 16. Okay, then we could say echo hello, you have logged in, number of logins times. This value might come from a database, for example. If you use Facebook, it knows how many times you've logged in, how many friends you have, what you had for breakfast this morning. All these things are stored in variables, right? Number of logins might come from a variable, and then as designers or developers, we would output this number coming from a variable. So numbers act very much like strings when you echo them to the screen, except that you can add numbers. You can add numbers together. So I can say, you know, I can then change the number of logins equals number of logins equals itself plus 14. So we then change the number, and then it now says 30 times. So as you may know, computers are very good at mathematics. So in this case, we said number of logins equals number of logins plus 14. So we add 14 to the number of logins. Okay. So as you can see, when we output variables that have numbers in them, these will actually output to the screen as strings. So this is just like the string 30, except it's a number 30, and that means that when we output to the screen, PHP treats numbers very much like strings. Okay, moving on. Holding strings and variables you've already seen before. As you know, you can put any kind of character-based output into a string, such as welcome message, thank you for visiting our site, we're glad you are here. Okay, then we can output that to the screen, and you will see that exact string as typed in our output to the browser. Okay, now combining two variables, you've seen numbers plus number. What about string plus string? Let's say we have two different strings. Our first string says, thank you for visiting our site, we're glad you are here. Our welcome header says, please log in. Okay, so if we want, we can combine these two strings together. We can say final message equals welcome message dot space dot welcome header. Okay, notice that I'm combining the first two strings together. Welcome message and welcome header will now go into a new variable called final message. So final message is actually the combination of these two strings, and I added a little space between them. See, if I don't add a space, I do this, and we also have to make sure we spell our variables correctly or we get errors. Look at that. So if I don't add a space, then I get this as the final result. Yes, there we are. So it says, thank you for visiting our site, we're glad you are here, please log in. But there's no space here, it runs together. So that's why I added the little spacer there. And notice that when you combine two strings, you use a dot. So if I wanted to say welcome message dot space, I have to add another dot after that space. Thank you for visiting our site, we're glad you are here, space, please log in. And then in the end, we have a nice formatted string. So that's combining two strings together. This is called concatenation. You might want to Google that and find out what concatenation means. It means combining two strings together. Okay? And lastly, let's say that we were to pass variables using get. So many times you'll have a welcome message, and it needs to be dynamic, and you'll see various versions of dynamic welcome messages on Facebook, MySpace, Hotmail, etc., etc. So let's put thank you dot username dot for visiting our site. So this is going to output a dynamic message containing the logged in user's name. Okay, so if you're working with a CMS or a system that already has login functionality, you won't have to worry too much about where that name comes from. It'll come somewhere from a variable. In our example today, let's pass that variable in using a query string. So I'm going to say the username is equal to get username. Okay, this will be from the query string, and I'll explain the query string here in just a minute. So if I go to this page right now, I get an error, right? But if I pass it, look, notice this question mark here. Username equals David, right? No errors. So I'm now going to echo our welcome message to the screen. It says, "Thank you, David, for visiting our site." Now if I change this to Mary, "Thank you, Mary." If I change this to anything, I could change this to the man in the moon. The man in the moon. "Thank you, the man in the moon, for visiting our site. We're glad you are here." Okay, it's a bit formalized, but that's totally fine. Okay, so look at this from the query string. The query string is this question mark username equals. So whenever you see a question mark in URLs as you're browsing the web, have a look at them and notice that they'll often pass variables that make a difference. In this case, we're passing in the username, and in this case, our PHP script is programmed to grab that username from the query string and then output that to the browser. So this is a very simple example and it's a very simple tutorial about variables, but what you have learned is what a variable is, how to hold numbers in variables, how to hold strings in variables, how to combine two variables using concatenation or addition, and passing variables using the get method of the query string. Feel free to visit our site at php.heaveninteractive.com for more tutorials. Thank you very much.